have an uninterrupted electricity and water supply from solar energy in the Gambia and beyond, worry no more. Because Solar Enterprise will provide you with the solutions at reasonable cost. We have experienced personnel who can install and advise you about your electricity and water supply with a warranty period. We have good quality solar products from North America and Europe. We provide services and sell products to individuals, organizations, institutions, private offices, communities, and government. These products are solar panels, batteries, charge controllers, inverters, water pump, water heaters, freezers, submersible pumps, and general solar accessories. Visit our stores at 48 Karaba Avenue and Brusubi Highway, or you can call us on 7657 479 980 8483 340 9400 or 635-9906.
Jamano Money Transfer Bureau de Change, your go-to option when it comes to money transfer. With Jamano, you can send money from anywhere in the world to your family and loved ones in the Gambia and be sure the funds will be delivered to them within the shortest time possible. For your convenience, funds sent through Jamano Money Transfer can be picked from all the banks and multiple other financial institutions, including Ajib Bank, Trust Bank, GT Bank, Mega Bank, Basic Bank, Reliance Financial Services, and Approved Services. Visit our head office at Brusubi opposite AfricMed next to Trust Bank Limited, or email us at info@jamanomt.com. You can as well call us on 310-3050 or 310-3051, or yet still 733-0688. Our opening hours are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday and 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday. Jamano Money Transfer, your most trusted money transfer service where customer satisfaction is paramount. When you think of a simple, fast, and reliable money transfer, think Jamano Money Transfer.
Agada. Albaka.
Mbaka important.
Yo, nga transfer la sto.
Ya transfer la sto.
Ha, code nyenji.
Okay. Nsila ID soto.
Sa soto. Sorry. Agada.
Bijan bro.
Albaka.
Mbaka.
Bara alla service o tariya. Mbare ki janna nun kunu bara tariya.
Jannom yona forest de bureau. Gambia tonkon na no mbari ya bere. Birim koyna fo kato.
Bari si kodo kino kato nim fo bolong blabe to.
56 branches mola soto Gambia jam.
Ha?
Gambia kono anin Gambia bantala bankol. Nka kodo kiya bere. Kodo sifa fo falindiro fo nyaadi lafta memmen na kodi to poto nin kodi maraw. Jannam number 1 di nyonta. Andum fana nata anoda enterprise sotale. Wolam nyindi ko domorol fana kol fana be firale le dadi ma nin domorol ni fana beteat. Gambia dawda yalo ma fa kendol sotale je.
Wo moyo diat.
Apelenta
ni wo ka ni lafta nyelen kendol e bina.
Yalo bu kanyi la ko la baraka ba.
Yalo ndel chosano lo.
Abaraka.
Islamic microfinance is becoming an increasingly popular mechanism for poverty alleviation, especially for developing countries around the world. This microfinance service adheres to the principles of Islam as a form of social responsibility. Yona Islamic Microfinance is the Islamic microfinance of choice in the Gambia, trustworthy and reliable. At Yona Islamic Microfinance, we provide savings products, current accounts, financing products in conformity with Islam. In addition, Yona Islamic Microfinance also offers local and international remittances, Takaful Fund, management of Zakat, management of Awqaf, trading and investment, and building of strategic partnerships to bring financial services to the doorstep of the poor with donor projects, madrasas, youth organizations, women groups, and farmer organizations. Make a choice with Yona Islamic Microfinance today. For more information on Yona Islamic Microfinance, call 377-2151 or 9832-151 or visit Yona head office at Tipa Garage, Bakote, or visit any Yona branch located countrywide near you.
Hello and welcome to the Brunch on Kerfatu Live. I am Lamin Cham and this is our weekly look at issues that have dominated the news in the past week. Today we will be dealing with only one topic because on the 16th July, that's about 10 days time, the National Assembly will vote on the controversial female FGM law that seeks to repeal the ban that has been placed on the practice in the Gambia since 2015. The issue have attracted a lot of debates all across the political divide, if you like. Religious leaders, traditional leaders, scientists, professionals have all been involved in the topic, whether to keep the law or to repeal it. Is the practice harmful or is it even religious? All these were angles that emerged during these heated debates. Now, the next coming days will be interesting and crucial because our National Assembly will make a decision on it. Now, we have been hearing a lot from activists and people who are actually very much in support of keeping the law. But not much has been heard from the people who want the law to be repealed, so that everybody can be free to undergo or practice FGM. Quite apart from religious leaders, very few other voices have been heard. One person, though, who's been all over defending the practice of FGM is Dr. Fuambai Sia Ahmadu. She is the founder of Gambian Women Are Free to Choose. Gambian Women Are Free to Choose. Now, a few days ago, actually yesterday, Gambian Women Are Free to Choose organized a press conference to enlighten the people about what its position is on this female FGM debate. Before I introduce Dr. Fuambai Ahmadu herself, I would like to take a little bit of what the organization actually intends to do in these coming days with this preamble from their press conference. The press conference actually was called, the local and international media as well, and stakeholders, so that they will be able to hear the position of the organization on female genital mutilation or female circumcision. The discussion aims at increasing there have been increasing concerns of the vast majority of affected women and general public regarding undue influence of Western donors, UN agencies, and other external organizations, and the actions of certain National Assembly members with regards to the Women's Amendment Bill. The aim of the press conference was threefold. One, to call for an end to external pressure on the Gambia and to uphold the female circumcision ban, to redirect the attention of National Assembly members to the evidence base or the lack of evidence of claims made by anti-FGM activists about the proposed life-threatening harms of female circumcision as practiced in the Gambia and purported sexual operation or subjugation of women through this practice. And thirdly, to clarify once and for all the issue of representation. Who has the legal, moral, and actual right to represent the multitude of views and voices of the women of the Gambia on FGM, a practice affecting our bodies and our lives, as well as our personal parental autonomy. Just an insight of what the organization intended to do at that press conference yesterday. So today let me first introduce her, Dr. Fuambai. Welcome to the brunch.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
And I think I must warn viewers at this stage that this conversation may be a little bit explicit for those who are quite sensitive to the issue, but it's important. We will be discussing with Dr. Siamba, one, the definition of FGM, because there has been a controversy here. Many people think, no, in the Gambia we practice this, others say, no, it's all the same, and what's it, and kind of. And the argument about health officials that it is harmful to women, and sexuality, that is, does it actually affect the sexuality of women? We will discuss in that. And we will, that's and other things, whether it is religious also, or whether it is not religious, we will discuss all that. So, Doctor, let me begin by asking you to introduce yourself. Tell us about your origins and your professional background.
Absolutely. Once again, Lamin, thank you for having me on this show. I enjoy this platform. My name, as you say, is Dr. Fuambai Sia Ahmadu, or Sia Fuambai Ahmadu. I'm an anthropologist by training, specializing in medical anthropology and legal anthropology, so the intersections of these fields. And I came to Gambia in late 1997 to do field work for my doctoral thesis. I was doing my PhD at the London School of Economics and Anthropology. I'm originally from, I would say, Sierra Leonean American. My parents are Sierra Leonean, and I was born in the United States, raised in Sierra Leone when I was really young, and then we moved back to the US, where I grew up. So I came to know about the practice of female circumcision. I will explain why I have that distinction. I emphasize that distinction. But female circumcision as an adult, when I went back with my mother, my grandmother, and several cousins to Sierra Leone to be initiated. This is a very traditional practice in Sierra Leone, and we have women's initiation, we have men's initiation. So I was initiated into what is known as the Bondo Society. Among some other groups, it's called Sande. But it's you have parallels here in the Gambia.
Absolutely. Were you specifically brought from America for that? Or?
Specifically. So at that time, there was no FGM law, and there was
But it was still not allowed in the United States.
There was no, the term had not even been coined. Female genital mutilation had not even been coined. There was no knowledge about the practice in terms of the global global knowledge, or the media had not really didn't know much about this practice. So it was still a time, just a few years before you have now the global movement. So I was able to experience that at a time where there wasn't all this negativity, this negative judgment. I was also at an age where I was in college. I was a final year student at university. And so I was able to really understand better, or at least be able to have a better sense of what was going on, and to ask questions, and to know, and to be able to judge some of the things that we're going to be talking about. I've written about it as an anthropology student. My first paper was published on the meanings of this practice in Sierra Leone among the Kono, and focusing on my own experience. So I knew that I wanted to study more about it, to learn more about it, especially when I started hearing the term female genital mutilation.
Okay, let's go straight. You really have taken a decision that it is not harmful, and despite all the definitions, let's talk about the definition of the WHO.
Yeah.
The little I know is that the WHO has said it is very dangerous and harmful to the health of women. It can bring about complications at the time of delivery. And we will talk about that. It can also reduce the sexuality of women. And so many in so many forums, international things, there have been protocols, legislations, international treaties signed in the name of protecting women and children, the girl child, and everywhere in the world, and even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, all said that cultures and practices that are harmful to the body must not be encouraged. So it interests me, I'm curious to know that such a highly educated person like yourself, who people should look up to for the protection of women and children, is talking like this.
So I'm glad the very last statement that you made, how someone like myself that should be and ought to be concerned about the health and welfare of women and girls, how can I support a practice, this practice? Again, I say use the terminology female circumcision, and I'll explain why. And it is simply because I went through the experience, not just my personal experience, but the experience of the women in my community. I was able to understand how it's practiced in Sierra Leone, how it's celebrated, the meaning it has in terms of bringing families together, the deep meanings. And so those experiences, to me, were not consistent with what the activists were saying about mutilation, right? And so therefore, I decided to dedicate my academic career and really put my own career on the line, right? I've made a lot of sacrifices professionally and career-wise by taking on this stance, and it's only because I can only stand for the truth of my experience and the truth of the experiences of the vast majority of women who are circumcised and who support this practice. So I do dispute the terminology. For several reasons. I hope we're going to cover those momentarily. But, the term itself, mutilation. And I want to say this to all Gambians. I said this in our press conference yesterday, but I really want to stress it. WHO uses the term mutilation as if it's a neutral term to refer to specific things, removal of external genitalia. But the term mutilation itself, check the dictionary, don't just take my word for it. Google the term mutilation. It means disfigurement, right? So there is this image that you have disfigured. You have made something ugly, right? Yes. That's number one. Number two, it means dysfunction. The thing that has been mutilated is no longer functioning. Right, so those two concepts, they don't put that in the definition, the WHO definition, but we are academics, we're scholars, we're smart, we know the use of language, how powerful language is, and so the reason why mutilation was chosen to replace the term circumcision was because of the activists, right? So activists against the practice wanted the stigma. They wanted to say that, this is a practice that somehow affects only women, only African women or Muslim women who undergo these types of genital practices, and that it has something to do with the patriarchy, male domination in our society, the backwardness of African society. And you hear the term barbaric, you hear the term, so all of these pre-colonial ways that you talk about Africa, the dark continent. We are ignorant. We meaning the women who practice this, are somehow prisoners. There's even a book written by an activist called Prisoners of Culture, right? So we are, or prisoners of ritual. Our mothers and our grandmothers were ignorant victims, and not just victims, but perpetrators of violence against girls for the pleasure and the to do the will of men in our societies.
So that's what you believe,
and I've been critiquing.
They want us to believe,
right? Well, that's their critique, and that's why they use the term mutilation. And I have been, not just me, but many scholars that I will be talking about in a moment have critiqued this terminology as fundamentally racist. Right? It is racist and it is sexist, because male circumcision is practiced, and it is accepted, not just in Africa, but in America. It's standard. I had my son within 3 days. I think it's immediately. You stay in the hospital for 3 days if you choose circumcision for your son. Before it was automatic. Your son was circumcised. Now they ask you, the mother. I make the choice. My son doesn't make the choice. He's a baby. He's an infant. I'm requesting the procedure, which is a physical procedure on his genitalia, on his penis. If I may say the word.
I warn the people.
But his penis is being cut because of my cultural preference, my aesthetic preference, my religious preference. These are my preferences as a parent. So I have that right, that autonomy, parental autonomy, the same parental autonomy that you have as a father to circumcise your son, the same parental autonomy that is guaranteed to us under the Convention on the Rights of Children. The same autonomy that we're also guaranteed under other human rights documents, instruments. So why are we denying African women and Muslim women who uphold what we call, a group of scholars that I work with, gender inclusive circumcision? Because in America and among certain religious groups, the Jews, other parts of the world, you only have male circumcision. In Africa and among Muslims that uphold the practice, you have both male and female. So it's gender inclusive. We celebrate the transition, we'll talk about that a little bit more, the transition of that it signifies for both boys and girls. It is a practice that we're proud of, females and males. So it's gender inclusive. Why are we saying that African women and Muslim women cannot exercise the same autonomy that you as a man can, or other men in the world, or other women? Again, I hope we talk about that later on. But
you spoke about how you put yourself, your professional career on the line.
Right, absolutely.
Because obviously, not many people, or maybe the powerful people you described, who, because out of racism and strength, wants to make the practice so ugly that people will be scared and perform it. So they would not agree with you, and they are very powerful in many powerful organizations, right? But the thrust of their argument it is harmful, and that brings us to the other topic.
The issue of harm.
Why do you think that the mere fact of cutting somebody, and in this case women, would not lead to health implications?
So that's a really good question.
They talk about excessive bleeding.
Sure.
Other complications, they said.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. And I'm not the only one that thinks this is, again, I work with an entire group of scholars around the world who have also been contesting the harmfulness of female circumcision practices as compared with similar practices among boys and other intersex. So yes, the mere fact of cutting anything, any part of the human body, can lead to risks.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That we accept. Male circumcision is a health risk.
Yes.
Male circumcision comes with health complications. You have excessive bleeding with male circumcision. Yes. You have deaths of boys. I made the point yesterday that more boys die of male circumcision and excessive bleeding around the world than in girl circumcision.
Is that scientific?
It's absolutely.
I agree with you one thing. When I went to circumcision, a lot of other boys were with us.
Right.
And I remember a certain village, similar thing happened there. It's always a batch group of people, 20, 21, 30. Okay, you're right, one or two really died.
Yeah, thank you.
But then what we were told was that it is a condition under which they were kept. We were not washing. And there was no antibiotics or these anti-septic things. Yes, that could really save the wound from getting septic. So at the time, we thought, we were told that because of the absence of those things, some of the children unfortunately developed this and died.
Right.
And not because they bled to death, or perhaps they live with a scar that's, later on developed into something.
So, Lamin, it's the same thing with females, right? The conditions can affect how the outcome for a young girl. These procedures, for the most part, the traditional procedures, Gambia, Sierra Leone, they are done under certain conditions. I was circumcised under traditional conditions. So there is probably a higher risk of infection,
Yes.
Of injury, of mistake, and that could lead to severe bleeding.
Yes.
In both
and severe bleeding
in both
can
males,
lead to death.
in both males and females.
Yes.
My question is, why are we discriminating against women? Why are we saying that there is more harm?
Perhaps the risk is greater.
No, but that's the thing. It's
the woman
not.
will go to conceive and go to deliver. The man will not.
And that is not true. The immediate short-term risks are there for both boys and girls. And as I've said to you, and the literature, the medical evidence will confirm this, more boys die. Probably also because male circumcision is more prevalent. But even in the United States, under the best kinds of care, the highest standards of care, boys die from accidents in hospitals. They can be maimed from mistakes. So there's an entire lobby as well, you don't hear about them, of anti-male circumcision activists. They're just as vocal and just as passionate.
Does that
Absolutely. I will forward them to you. I mean, they are just as vocal, and they say the same things, that it impacts sexual functioning, that it is mutilation because they feel that they've been disfigured without their permission. There have been mistakes where some of them have been maimed for life. So they are very passionate, they're very vocal. Nobody listens to them. They are mostly dismissed by the media.
So why?
Because they are men, and because it's mainly women who are calling themselves feminists, who want to make this into a gender issue. They want to make this into a feminist issue. My personal belief is because of how much power it has given them as feminists to be able to have these kinds of policies around the world. They've been able to use our bodies basically to consolidate their power. When I say their, I mean these feminists who are in positions of power in various international agencies and in various countries, donor countries, and in organizations, NGOs. So I disagree, first of all. Female circumcision is not more harmful than male circumcision. You obviously have different types of female circumcision. You also have different types of male circumcision. Nobody talks about that as well. So there are certain types, especially the types that are performed here in the Gambia, that have very little harm, right? Where very little harm.
I've had proponents of the practice say that what has been referred to as GM is not what's practiced in the Gambia. We don't have that. And then the other people will say, "Oh, what is the difference?"
Yeah.
Are you knowledgeable in the kind of practice?
Yeah. So you have. And I will use the WHO categorizations, even though I reject the mutilation terminology. Yeah. But I will use the categorizations just because it's helpful. It's what people know. So you have type 1, and type 1 is divided into type 1A and type 1B. Type 1A is what a lot of Muslims around the world, not just Africans, but Dawoodi Bora, Indians, they're Muslims. In Singapore, I believe in Singapore, in South Asia, you have many communities, Muslim communities that practice this type 1, and it's basically a nick. It's a small nick or prick on the prepuce, the foreskin. Right, so males and females both have foreskin around the glands. So it's a prick on or some do a removal of the glands, which is equivalent to male circumcision. Right, the glands only, the foreskin that covers the head of the clitoris, because we don't even understand what a lot of people don't even understand what the clitoris is and how it is impacted. Type 1B is a removal of the glands. So there's the exposed head of the clitoris. There's a very small fraction of the actual organ. The actual organ is within the body. Do you understand? It is the great majority, the proportion of the clitoris is within the body, and it's intact. No one can touch it. It's sensitive and it's functional. So type 1A and type 1B are performed here in the Gambia. There's also type 2, which is the removal of the inner labia, right? The labia minora. They also divide that into type, 2A, type 2B, but basically that includes the removal of the inner labia. So now type 3, which they say is the most extreme form, which doesn't occur here in the Gambia except among very, very rare instances among immigrant women. That involves type 2, different forms of type 2, and then a suturing. So sewing up of the majora. So what you have is a smooth surface and just a light scar and a tiny opening for the passage of urine and the passage of menses. That happens mainly in the Horn of Africa.
In Somalia,
Sudan, some parts of Ethiopia, but it is extremely rare, unheard of really in Sierra Leone. In fact, when you tell people in Sierra Leone this practice exists, they don't even believe it. And even when I was working here in Gambia, and I would tell people, they didn't believe it. But we have migrant communities because among some Malian populations, they practice that type, that third type. There's also a kind of variation here in the Gambia. Again, it's rare, but certain ethnic groups, certain Fula, for instance, ethnic groups, can request when a child is like, she's undergoing circumcision at 6 or 7, a sealing, which is similar to the infibulation, where they kind of fuse the opening. And this is in their communities, I guess, for the prevention of early or premarital sexual intercourse. That hardly exists in the Gambia. What exists is type 1, and then also some forms of type 2. These practices cannot be said outside of the short-term immediate risks, which again are very rare, considering the environment that these practices are happening, where they're happening. You should see calamities all the time, but even those cases are quite rare. You don't have those kinds of health outcomes for women who undergo these procedures. There's been tremendous exaggeration on the part of WHO and activists. What they do is they show pictures of girls being held down and screaming, or they'll show you pictures of razors, right? Yes. Or knives. Yes. Or somebody will come and say, oh, I was held down and they did this to me and they threw my clitoris in the sea. All of these stories that will give the public, the outsiders, the impression that this is some horrific thing that is happening to girls and to, in some cases, women. Like in East Africa, usually women are adults, females are adults when they are circumcised. And I'm not trying to diminish or dismiss the experience of horror or trauma for some girls and boys. I've had boys tell me the trauma and terror that they experienced. It's not to diminish that at all, but the fact that activists, FGM activists, are exploiting these stories and these experiences, and they're trying to make this. They're creating a thing, FGM, that doesn't exist. This thing, FGM, is African women. It's barbaric, it's Muslim women and our barbaric men who have forced us into this practice to maim us sexually so that we don't enjoy sex. So this is the idea of FGM that activists want you to have in your head. That's what they say they are fighting. They're fighting something that doesn't exist, right? They're fighting this boogeyman that doesn't exist. And we as African women, we now have to stop and say, oh, wait a minute, what's going on here? Yes, there is this practice, but what happens in other communities? What happens in other parts of the world? Why are they just picking on African women? And if it's about health, what can we do to improve the environment and medicalize? For instance, WHO will tell you, oh, this practice should not be medicalized for African and Muslim women because it will, just reproduce the oppression. But I have white women. I am from the US. I live in Bethesda. I live in Maryland. I know that white women can go to the hospitals, and adolescent girls. It's perfectly legal for them to go to their doctors, who some of them don't even have surgical experience. They can have the same procedures under the best, care by doctors, equipment, and so on in clinics. Care that is being denied to African women and girls.
You mean over there in
the U.S., white
women
women, educated white women, wealthy white women, because the operations are expensive. The operation that I got in the bush in Kono,
free of
charge. I went to a clinic in Bethesda and asked them for the same procedure. That would have cost $7,500. $7,500 for a labia. They call it labiaplasty. Look it up. Lamin, do not take my word, please. Look up labiaplasty. The removal of the inner labia, the shaping up and evening of the labia, the inner and outer labia. And also, sometimes they just say labiaplasty, but what also happens is clitoroplasty. That is a reduction of the clitoris. So they reduce the clitoris to have the same aesthetic effect as my own procedure. It looks almost...
And they call that...
They call it not mutilation. WHO does not even classify that as mutilation. UNICEF, UNFPA do not even include those procedures in their numbers of women affected by FGM. But if we go by WHO definition, which is the removal of external genitalia, right? The female external genitalia, the labia, the part that is seen. And we've even had to correct them, because I used to say the entire clitoris is removed. You can't remove a woman's clitoris, it's inside. But then this fits into the category. What white women are doing fits into the category of FGM. They will not call their own women mutilated, but we, Africans, we now are invited to refer to our mothers who gave birth to us as mutilated women. We are invited to insult their private parts, which is against our culture as Africans and as Muslims. So we use this terminology, female genital mutilation, to insult our mothers and our grandmothers who gave birth to us. And you know the importance of reproduction for women, and the role that females play in the reproduction of our societies. We insult them, right? And we are now eradicating the procedure that we do, that they have handed down to us. Meanwhile, these guys are making money over there. White doctors, male doctors, predominantly male doctors, are making money from white women going into their offices, and their daughters, because adolescent teenagers can go, they just need permission from their parents, can go and get these procedures privately. No one knows about it. It's nobody's business. Tell me that is not racism. Tell me that is not discrimination. As an African woman, right? And Muslim women, right? You're saying to me, just look at me personally. I'm educated. I have the resources. If I go into this cosmetic surgery place and request this same procedure, all right, and if I don't mention that I'm African, I'm doing it for culture, I'm doing it for my religion, I can have it, no problem. Pay my money, and they're getting wealthy. Doctors are getting wealthy.
And they don't call that female mutilation.
It's genital cosmetic.
They call it cosmetic surgery.
So for very strong ideological and political reasons, I refuse to use the term mutilation, because it is applied in a racist way to refer to African women and to Muslim women. And I absolutely reject that. And I encourage all Gambians, and especially the National Assembly members,
we are coming to that,
to stop this insult of our mothers and our grandmothers.
Very interesting. All right, you dealt with the definition, you dealt with the argument as to whether it is harmful or not harmful. And interesting, I learned that people in the West, would go into clinics and get this procedure done. They pay a lot of money to have it done, but then they don't call it FGM. They call it cosmetic surgery, whatever the name is.
Female genital cosmetic
surgery. And this
surgery.
practice is not even categorized or under the
it's not included in the figures.
What about the argument that sexuality, it reduces, impairs the sexuality of the girl or the woman who...
So yesterday in the press conference, I used the term gaslighting, right? And I want to explain what that means.
What do you mean by
gaslighting? It's not just lying, because you can lie to someone that's just lying.
It's often said
but
about
gaslighting is more insidious. It is vicious, right? Because it is when somebody denies you your experience of reality. Somebody says, no, you're not experiencing that. You're experiencing something else.
Yes, I've got this.
So it's gaslighting, and it's psychologically powerful. It's a way to really, they say that circumcised women, were brainwashed, but they're the ones brainwashing us. Because African women, myself included, I went through this as an adult. So I was experienced before and after, and I've been very, very open that it has not affected one bit my own experience. And this was a shock to me, because growing up in the US, you hear feminists, you read all these magazines and they're always talking clitoris this, clitoris, clitoris, and like that is the key organ for female enjoyment and female orgasm, right? And I don't disagree that it plays a role, but remember, the majority of the organ is subcutaneous. It's underneath, it's within the body. So I expected, when I learned after the procedure that this is the part that was removed, I thought, oh my God, they've ruined me, they finished me, I'm mutilated. Until I realized that it was not true. And it's not just my experience, but when I came to the field, I would talk to women, they would just laugh. Because it does not impair a woman's ability to enjoy sex and to have an orgasm, right? And by telling women that, especially young girls, you're messing with their minds. And for female sexuality that is so complex, it's not like you men, you're, God bless you all differently. But with women, we need our minds. So if somebody is already implanting in your mind that because you went through a practice as a young child, you're not going to enjoy sex, then you're already thinking you're not going to enjoy it. And so when you're in that moment, you're going to be anxious, you're going to be ashamed, you're not going to be able to release your mind and work with your partner, and your partner getting to know your body. Every woman is different. You're now also telling men that because women have been circumcised, oh, don't bother. Don't even try to please them, because you can't please them in bed because they've been circumcised. This is wrong. Our African brothers are being fed wrongful information, and because of the stigma that is attached to the practice, most women who are educated and who have experience, who know that it's a lie, will not come out and speak openly because there's a stigma, right? Then you have to say, oh, you've been circumcised, and then that places you in mutilated, you're now mutilated. But I guarantee you, I did the research here in the Gambia, in Sierra Leone as well, and I grew up with girls who had been to Bondo. Before I even knew what was going on, these girls were definitely not having any problems. So that is a misconception, and I also want to just quickly.
You don't mind I take coffee because you are.
Yes. So Lamin, mind you, activists against male circumcision say the same thing about male circumcision, that the prepuce, the foreskin around the glans, is the most sensitive part of the male sexual organ. That's where all thousands and thousands and thousands of nerve endings are, just like with the female glands. And so their argument is when you remove that part, that you deprive a man from achieving his full sexual pleasure and ability to enjoy sex. Now, if I tell you that as a circumcised man, you would probably think I'm crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so imagine now these activists telling us and trying to convince the world that we're not enjoying sex. You're gaslighting us. You're asking us to deny our own bodies, our own experiences, our own feelings. Now, African and Muslim women, we don't even know what we feel in our bodies. That's what they're trying to say. That we can't even know when we're having an orgasm, right? Which is ridiculous. So I think, and because in many ways, because I am educated, because I am very westernized, I do talk about the topic of sexuality, because this is one of the greatest harms of the FGM campaign, deceiving young girls, deceiving the public, deceiving our communities that we are sexually impaired. Not only that we are, but that is the purpose of the practice. So then they're also denying us our cultural heritage. That means we're not entitled to culture. There's an activist and a scholar, Dr. Hilary Burridge, who's been writing a lot about Gambia, a white British scholar. And she's been saying things, she continues to use that word FGM. She doesn't care. That she denies us, African women, right, our own ability. So they say that we're brainwashed. How can we be brainwashed about our own feelings, our own sexual feelings? So we need to really counter that.
But people who share your school of thought, who come from your school of thought, also used to say, well, those who didn't do this will eventually be more promiscuous, more sexually active.
Right.
So in a way, doing it is helping them.
Okay.
That argument is, the activist says nonsense.
Right. And I do. There are myths on both sides. Believe me, when you talk to women who are circumcised, they have their own myths about uncircumcised women. They have their own names, derogatory names.
Yes, here they will say Solima.
Solima, exactly.
Yes.
They have and Solima is a very special word. I covered that, exactly. Yeah. I've covered that in my PhD thesis. So Solima, you have really vile words that they have for uncircumcised women: dirty, unclean, this, that, and the other. And they say they're the ones who are never satisfied sexually, because that thing is there. So they say that they're never satisfied.
Yes.
So I hear it on both sides.
So what do you think about it?
There are myths on both sides, and we have to end. When I work in the field, on the ground, I have to check these women too and say, no, they say it will grow to be like a...
Interesting.
I have to check them too and say, these are all things that our parents taught us or our grandparents. And the reason why is because they were trying to instill in us certain values, right? So even for men, because they say that even with male circumcision, or they used to say that it tames the sexuality so that men aren't, all over the place.
Promiscuous.
What I really believe is that circumcision and the attending ceremonies, initiation, is really about inculcating values, discipline, self-restraint, being able to, to understand that, for instance, we value marriage. Sex should be between a husband and a wife. And you should wait until you are married before you engage in that. So you learn all of that through initiation. And so circumcision is associated with these values. So people now tend to think that if you didn't go through circumcision or you didn't, that you're promiscuous. But I don't think it's because they really believe that you're literally more promiscuous because of the surgery. Because a lot of Muslim women will say, oh no, for instance, you have certain groups here, many Wolof women and Aku women who do not undergo the practice. Those who are Muslims, they say, oh no, they are good Muslims and they're good wives. So it's not the operation, it's the values.
I see.
So I think...
So both sides have this argument.
Both sides have
that
myths
you cannot take to the bank.
That we cannot take to the bank, the sexuality. In fact, what we do know from research is that there are uncircumcised women who will say that they don't enjoy sex or they don't have orgasms, but they are uncircumcised. So if that thing is so instrumental in sexual enjoyment, why is it that a lot of women, not a small number, at least 25% is a number that goes around, of women, adult women, do not experience orgasm? Right? And it's because for women, it's more complex than that. We have to know our bodies. We have to feel loved. There's a lot of things going on for women to be able to relax enough to be able to experience.
They also argue that, like you said, the children normally have no share in this.
Yeah.
It is the parents that decide that. So they think that is fair. Why don't you leave until the child is mature enough to decide whether to do it or not? But in this case, the activists and the WHO and others, the people who say they care about human rights, believe that it is unfair to decide for the child.
So here is my advice to human rights activists, to anti-so-called FGM activists. If you are going to make these claims about women, about females, you have to make the same claims about men and about males, right? That is what's fair. We are guaranteed equality, gender equality, and they're always talking about gender equality, but they want to treat us differently. They want to treat us separately, as if we have no agency, meaning we can't say yes, we can't say no. We have no autonomy, meaning we are not in control of our own bodies. They give men that respect, They give men that regard, but they don't give that to us, right? So the question of consent, if you're going to apply that to girls, you also have to apply that to boys. We don't give boys consent. My son did not consent to be circumcised. I made a decision based on what most parents do, which is what I believe is going to be in the best interest of my son. Physically, aesthetically, culturally, religiously, those things, the way that I know that I'm going to bring up my son, male circumcision is very important. So I make that decision for my son. And if I have a daughter, I'm blessed with stepdaughters, but I didn't have my own biological daughter.
So in other words,
right. So I think that I cannot judge another woman who makes the same decision that I made for my son. If you make that for your daughter, how can I judge you? How can I deny you the same right that I am privileged to have? What these anti-FGM activists and WHO and UN officials, and I used to work, by the way, for UNICEF here in the Gambia. With
your weird thinking.
No, but this was before that. This is very important because this was at a stage before this whole FGM thing, came about. And so you need, I would love for you to look at UNICEF. They should have it on record. The advice that I gave at that time, which was to look at how integral this practice is within Gambian society and Gambian culture, and the fact that it is gender inclusive. You can't just focus on the female side and leave the male side. But back to what I was saying, in terms of consent, I don't object to it. I personally, if you ask my personal opinion, we are parents. We make decisions for our children. That's why they're children.
So you are saying you might as well ask, why don't you wait for your child to
before going to school
to ask him whether he's going to school or whether he will be a Christian?
Because that has a permanent impact on that child's life. Yeah. It may not be physical, but it's in other ways it's a permanent impact. So we don't ask children this because.
Yeah, we're still on air. Go ahead.
Should I continue?
Yeah, we agree.
Because they're children. We are parents, and we come from different cultures. What a parent! My best friends are American, Trinidadian. They come from other cultures, other, upbringing. Female circumcision is not a part of their tradition, so they're not going to choose to circumcise their daughters. But it is a part of my tradition, right? So I can make different choices. And the reason why the organization is called Gambian Women Are Free to Choose, number one, we are asserting, right, that we are women. We are adult women, just like any other women in the world. So if other women get to choose to go to the hospital, to sneak to the hospital and pay $7,000 and get their labiaplasty or clitoroplasty, why are you denying Gambian women or Muslim women the same privilege and the same bodily autonomy to go wherever we want to go? If we choose to go to the clinic, we go to the clinic. If we choose to go to the bush, we go to the bush. But it's our bodies. All I'm stressing is that we need to understand that equality is equality. And you can't say that, African women have to be treated. You're infantilizing us. You're treating us as if we're children, and we are not children. Interestingly, in England, the law defines circumcised women as children, right? So if you are a circumcised woman, it doesn't matter if you're an adult, the law treats you as a child. So you don't have bodily autonomy. I think that is against the human right, international human rights standards. But nobody looks at that. Of course they practice white women go and get their female genital cosmetic surgery in the UK. White girls, if I'm a mother, I'm a white woman, and I just say white, but I also mean British, right? You can be black
American,
British
or Western,
or educated, but it's mostly white women who are doing it. So I can if I'm a white woman, I'm not going to be questioned if I'm white. If I'm a white woman, my name is whatever. I want to take my white daughter because I've observed that her labia looks uneven, or she may have problems in future, or it's just problematic. I can take her to the medical doctor. The NHS, the National Health Service, will pay for a procedure to cut that girl's labia, right? And then, meanwhile, as an African woman, if I were to bring my African daughter and request the same thing,
They would say, no, it's FGM.
they will say it's FGM, and they will arrest me because I have dared to arrange for the mutilation of my daughter. And another thing that troubles me is that we can't say the word culture. This is really an attack on African culture. It's not the practice that they're against, because they're doing it. It's the saying that it's because for cultural reasons. Because we are Africans, we have our culture. We can't say that. Western feminists don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear culture because they're not included, right? African women are then saying they have something that does not include them, and they expect to be the leaders of feminism. They expect to be the ones to define the parameters of feminism around the world. They want to dictate policies in New York and Geneva, right? Or from their offices in Nairobi, and tell us what to do. So if we say culture, then it's a problem. We're now saying that we have something that empowers us, that comes from our mothers and our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers, our female ancestors, that is empowering. They don't understand that language. And so what they want is to deny us that they want to deny us our culture and religion. Because if we say that it's because of Islam, oh, look at them, patriarchal.
Yes, I was going to religion.
Okay, so I'll wait for your question.
All right. that is, when you said this is religion, and you have a lot of people, actually more Muslim women, in most Muslim-dominated countries, not doing the practice. For example, in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and other places where most Muslims look up to, it's outlawed there. Why do you think we have any entitlement as a Muslim to do it, when actually in areas that we think are more Muslim than us are not doing it?
Well, I don't know about more Muslim. I think you have different interpretations of Islam or the Quran, but I'm going to try to answer your question sort of piecemeal. I'll take it apart a little bit, and I'm going to separate my own personal opinion and personal experience from sort of the arguments and the discourse. So for most, again, this is not my personal opinion, but for most Muslim practitioners, women practitioners, and remember there are different types, especially the ones that practice the minor nikah, who do it as an Islamic practice. Again, for them it's gender inclusive. They believe that circumcision was not simply required of men, and boys, but also of females, and that it's an important reflection of the woman's association with the Creator. Right? This is some of the argument made by the Dawoodi Bohra Muslim. I'm not sure if I paraphrased it or articulated it very well, but for them it's a religious link between women and also, Allah, also the Creator. There are African Muslim practitioners who point, and I think this is very interesting. I covered it in my PhD thesis. I haven't had time to write it up as a separate article, and these are women, many of whom are not literate. They never went to school, they're illiterate, but they will point to the story of Abraham and Sarah, and importantly, Hagar. We never hear about Hagar, but Hagar was Egyptian, right? And in Egypt, just like maybe here in Gambia, definitely in Sierra Leone, over 90% of women are circumcised. So 9 times out of 10, Hagar would have been circumcised. So in their stories, they say that Hagar either was circumcised or it was Abraham who, and Sarah, who came from a community that does not practice female circumcision, was envious of Hagar because of her circumcision. So they see it as upholding a tradition, a biblical tradition, which is also a cultural tradition from Hagar that was handed down. Now, this is where I'm coming in now as a scholar, right? As an anthropologist. Both male and female circumcision predate Islam. So both practices were occurring in Africa before Islam. And I would even argue, especially female, but even before, I would argue Judaism, the Torah. They met as our people say, we met it here. So our ancestors were doing it from time immemorial. And I study the Mandinka. I told you my ethnic group is close to the Mandinka. But even in Mandinka stories of origin, you see that it's built around creation. So in terms of whether it is biblical or whether it's Islamic or non-Islamic, I think the various schools of thought are entitled to their views culturally. In the Middle East, some parts of the Middle East, because in some parts of the Middle East it's practiced. It's not practiced. I think it has a lot to do with race and how and the emphasis on the patriarchy, on Abraham and his descendants versus the mother of Ishmael, who is Hagar. So they stopped a tradition that was Hagar, but they continued a tradition that was Abraham. Right. And that's fine because their emphasis is on the patriarchal connection of Abraham to God. Let me say this one thing though, for both male and female circumcision. A lot of Muslims will say to me, male circumcision is Sharia. It's required. It's in the Quran. We have to do it. It's law. That's not true. And it was when I was engaged in this research from Muslim activists who are against male circumcision that I realized that there is no mention of male circumcision in the text of the Quran. No mention.
What about female?
There is no mention in the text of the Quran of either male or female circumcision.
Here they argue that.
But the hadith.
The hadith.
There's a hadith, which is some opponents will say, oh, it's a weak hadith. Supporters say, no, it's a strong hadith. It's a confirmation of this practice. So if it's your culture and your tradition and you happen to be Muslim, your tendency is to say that this is a hadith that expresses an important part of Islam. And you practice it, fine, it's okay for you. If you come from a school of thought where maybe it wasn't part of your tradition or part of your culture, or you don't want to emphasize your connection to Africa and Egypt and Hagar, right, like in Saudi Arabia, you might say, oh no, it's not in the Quran, we don't have to do it. And they're right, it's not in the Quran, you don't have to do it, but you can choose to do it. And if you choose to do it as part of your Islamic faith, that is religious expression, and that is guaranteed under the Constitution. If we allow males, Muslim men, to practice it as a religious practice, and it's not mentioned in the Quran, the Quranic text, right? And you point to the Constitution and say religion, then you also have to give women, because the Constitution also guarantees gender equality. Absolutely. So you also have to say, and religious expression. And
freedom to express your
exactly, religious expression. So women as well, who are Muslim and who say we do this for Islamic reasons, are also entitled to that protection. And on top of that, you have women and men who reject the pre-Islamic or pre-Abrahamic context of these rituals, right? So they may say they don't want the kankurango, they don't want the masquerades, this is all related to evil or whatever, but they want the pure physical circumcision that they believe is Islamic. And this is why I think, and I don't want to try to paraphrase the words of some of the prominent imams here, but I think that's why there's the emphasis on a certain kind of procedure, type 1A only, that is purely Islamic. That's a school of thought. That's fine. That's okay. If you subscribe to that, that's okay. If you don't, you're still protected under the Constitution, because the Constitution upholds culture. And this is our cultural identity. So, and for me, my last name, Ahmadu, it's a Muslim name. So in Sierra Leone, we have strong Muslim and Christian influence. My mother converted to Christianity. She raised us all as Christians. So I identify as a Christian. But I want to stress that in Gambia, focusing just on the practice as an Islamic practice leaves out women who identify as Christians or who don't identify as either Christian or Muslim, but they're traditionalists or what have you. So it's a practice that women across board are uphold. Whether you're Muslim or you're Christian, you uphold it for reasons that are important to you.
Let's deal with the elephant in the room finally. You know, There is a lot of debate about this issue, and Parliament is about to pass or vote on whether to keep this law or to repeal it. Because apparently when this law was enacted in 2015, many people believe that why it wasn't an issue since then was nobody was ever prosecuted. But when last year, the beginning of last year, I guess, 3 women were prosecuted. Then, of course, all hell broke loose. I mean, the proponents and of this law said, well, no. Like your organization goes, people must be free to do it or leave it, but nobody should be punished for doing it. And then the legal arguments came, no, but there is a law against it, so that law has to be enforced. Now, you said here in your preambles that the people, the government and the National Assembly members must not actually heed to the pressure of the Western NGOs and activists.
Absolutely.
So you believe they are interfering with that?
Absolutely, without a doubt. So I'm not going to name any names.
I don't want you to name names.
But I'm privy.
But how do you believe that
they know? Many of them know who I am and the people that I'm involved with. Not just in Gambia, but outside.
Yes, you've been.
So this is something it's not 30 years now. So
why do you think they have been under pressure?
It's not that I think, I know for a fact.
Okay.
Right. So I have people who have taken part in these deliberations, or who've been asked to take part in these deliberations. So we talk. It's a small world. The female circumcision, or quote unquote FGM community, is a small one. So we know what's going on, and we know which organizations are involved. Once again, I say this as an American, I strongly believe this as a U.S. citizen, that there is no way that U.S. citizens, Americans, would allow for this kind of interference in a policy that affects women. Maybe abortion is the most heated issue now in the United States. Abortion is illegal in Sierra Leone. Can you imagine Sierra Leonean women now going to policymakers in the U.S. Congress and trying to influence them against their views or positions on Roe versus Wade, or any other issue affecting the autonomy, the bodily autonomy and the rights of women, or really any issue? It's unheard of. But how long are we going to continue this, what I call neocolonialism, allowing outsiders, because Gambia is an aid-dependent country, right? So we are now allowing the citizens of this country, the women of this country, to be their values and their cultures, their religious views now has to be compromised, because there are some Western feminists out there who, for the reasons that we've discussed, are hypocritically opposed to this practice. That's absolutely wrong. There should not be any interference from any other country, from the United States, where female genital cosmetic surgery, white women's FGM is occurring. They're not focusing on that, but they're instead now trying to focus, on African and Muslim women. They're basically reproducing what the powerlessness of African and Muslim women by themselves trying to control and impose their own views on us. So that's absolutely wrong. Now they're trying to go through other ways, using other Africans to try to influence National Assembly members. And that is, it's complete. And we're talking monetary inducement. So not just the threat. It's more than an allegation. I'm telling you, I know from people who are involved that these are financial inducements, whether it's straight cash or promises of funding. We have what we call the FGM industry. This is why a lot of people are invested in keeping this alive. It's paying a lot of salaries, building a lot of homes. It's making a lot of careers. A lot of, academics have built their careers around this issue. A lot of feminists. It's given a lot of power to the...
So like you said, the proponents of this, of FGM here would say these people are all under the influence of donors and donor money and influencers who...
Right, most of them. I'm not saying there are no activists that are sincere. I work with very sincere activists who are not getting donor money. And that's how you know they're sincere, because it's from the heart. They're doing what I'm doing. It's their labor and their sweat and their own money that they're using to educate communities and to work with women.
If these people, you believe, it's an industry.
It is an industry.
They're doing everything for money.
It is an industry.
Campaigning.
Even the media representation of FGM, this idea that it's this horrific thing, passive women are being sexually maimed. That image is what sells overseas, and they can then appeal to their audiences for money, because it's the taxpayers. It's the British taxpayers. It's the U.S. taxpayers. It's, the money is coming from somewhere. And it's coming out of the pockets of Westerners. It's not coming out of our pockets. Good. Do you think one Gambian, name me one Gambian who will use their own money, Gambian activists, right, to fight for they're not going to use their own money.
Well,
they'll never do what I'm doing.
It could be said of you too. I mean, you are.
I have an organization
all over the world. You are well known to be,
and it has been
for FGM. And
no, I'm not for FGM.
Opposing campaign against FGM.
I am not for FGM. I will never ever be for the mutilation of women and girls. Female circumcision.
Let me reframe it.
Yeah.
You are a proponent of.
I'm a proponent of the rights
of
women who want to uphold the practice, to uphold it.
So now you are in the country at a time when this crucial decision is going to be made.
Yes.
Your timing here, your presence, the timing is suspicious. Are you not also? Can it be said also you are also sponsored by some?
Okay. Nobody can ever.
Your timing is suspicious.
That's what I'm saying. First of all, I'm going to address the suspicious aspect of my timing. Nobody can tell me that I'm funded by anyone. I wish, please, if there are funders out there, feel sorry for me. This is my money. This is my labor, and I have to make sacrifices. My bills, I have to make choices, really difficult ones, painful ones. Even in terms of my career, I've had to turn down so many positions, so many jobs, because I know that I'm going to be harassed or blackmailed or what have you. So I'm not, I wish I were being funded. I'm not being funded. This is my labor and my sweat, because it is my culture. This is, Muslim women are my sisters, with my family, we have Muslim practitioners. So I believe in that so much. I believe in Bondo. I'm a member of Bondo Society in Sierra Leone. So I believe in the empowerment of women through these traditional structures. And I believe that women like myself, who have had the blessing and the opportunity to be educated at the highest levels, at the best institutions of the world, that we have a duty to our communities. We have a duty to our women, the vast majority of whom are not literate. These women don't know what's being said about them outside. These women have no idea. They don't even know what is gender. What is feminism? They don't know these terminologies. They don't have access to social media. The younger generation do, but the older generation. So I'm trying to, even the playing field a little bit by working with these women on the ground in Gambia, in Sierra Leone. Again, it's through my resources. When I was working with the Dawoodi Bora community years ago in the United States, because there was, the very celebrated case there, at that time, I got paid as a professional, as a consultant. That is the only time that I can think of that I ever got paid many years ago. But for the past 30 years, I've been engaged in this research. In this field, I've made professional sacrifices and financial sacrifices. And I would like to see if they're genuine. Jaha Dukure, who I mentioned and talked about yesterday, an individual that I have respect for in many ways, but I take issue with how she has falsely represented herself and her experience. I've invited her to come and join me, but I can't offer her money. So, but in answer to your question, my timing here, first of all, I consider myself a Gambian, certainly by marriage. My late husband is Major Ibrahima Kambi, yes, of Brikama. Yeah. So I have in Kiang, yes.
And
so
Brikama and
Kiang. So I have family here. I have daughters here, stepdaughters here, who are affected by this. I have a home here. I have a home. My home is in in Kambikuna in Nyambai. So I have a home here. I am a Gambian for all intents and purposes. I'm here with my namesake. So I have commitments here. I'm here all the time. This organization was formed in 2016. Not today. 2016. So I have been coming here, working quietly in communities. I'm not blowing my own horn, but I am working quietly. I've been working with individuals, I won't name them. And another thing is, because I've achieved my goals in life academically, and I don't want other girls who are just coming up, young women who are just coming up in their careers, who are working with me, to be compromised. So I've worked very quietly with them on the ground over the years. How am I even here? How do I know this is happening if we're not on the ground? Yeah. After COVID, we had ceased activities for a little while. But believe me, I have people on the ground. We are on the ground. We have this community-based organization was since 2016. So I'm here, again, I timed it. I come here for family reasons. But I certainly took advantage of being here in this moment to now personally meet with my heroes in the National Assembly, in your National Assembly, like Honorable Almami Jiba, and those who, they're battling forces that are much greater than they are.
What would be your message finally to the National Assembly members?
So my message to them is to do what they're supposed to do, what they were voted in to do.
And that is
by their constituencies.
To repeal the bill.
They're there. They're not answerable to the U.S. Embassy. They're not answerable to the U.K. Embassy. They're not answerable to WHO. They're not answerable to Professor Hillary Barrage. They're not answerable to anti-FGM activists. They're answerable to the people. The people put them in power, and to the Constitution of the Gambia. So they should be listening, not to so-called stakeholders. They should be taking trips back to their regions and talking to the women, talking to the men, talking to girls, talking to people within their regions, because they're voted. That's their job. That's what they were voted for, and they're going to, most of them or some of them, will have to contest in 2027. Mm-hmm. The women aren't going to forget, right? So everybody's looking, everybody's paying attention in this moment. How are you voting? I can't tell them which way to vote. I'm not a lobbyist. Somebody asked me, one of the journalists yesterday, well, what are you doing? How are you working with the National Assembly members? I happened to reach out to Honorable Jiba just because I was, gathering information and wanting to learn more.
Not because he's the sponsor of the bill.
I don't have to lobby him. He's the sponsor. So I'm not lobbying him. I'm not a lobbyist. We work with lawmakers to provide them with information. I'm an advocate and I'm an activist. We provide them with information. We provide them with literature. For instance, I have worked with colleagues around the world, I keep saying that to you, who have conducted research in their areas of expertise. They're not activists. They're not getting paid. They're also risking their careers and their reputations by providing information. And so I hope that viewers will go on our website, sorry to plug this in, but awafc.org, and look for the literature there. Then you will find others who have critiqued the WHO FGM discourse and policies. That's all there. The so-called medical evidence. You'll find very good critiques there, but they're kept away from the public because the media is aligned, for the most part, except for independent journalists like you, the media is aligned with the activists. So I would ask the National Assembly members to educate yourselves on both sides. Don't just listen to what I refer to as FGM propaganda, right? One person saying, oh, they did this to me, they did that to me. Or one doctor saying, oh, yes, I had one case of bleeding, or because that happens to boys as well. These are individual anecdotal bits of evidence. They're not insignificant, but look for the scientific studies. What are they saying? Look for the critiques of those scientific studies. And I'm happy to assist anybody, any of your assistants or those that work with you that want to contact our organization. I'm here with my assistant as well. We can provide you with information. Can I just do one last plug?
Yeah, go ahead.
We are holding a information session by Zoom with professionals in the field, attorneys,
What is that?
anthropologists, human rights, feminists, whatever, who are also critical of the FGM discourse and the data that's out there and the current policies, and they have done their research. So we're having a symposium, and to make it easy for everyone, we're doing it primarily by Zoom. So I can send you the link, and I hope that National Assembly members will avail themselves to this link.
When is the event?
And here on Tuesday, the 9th at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
In fact, you can even host us here.
Okay. Please
You can host us here. I invite, I already told you at the outset of the show, invite Jahadu Kure or any
activist.
anti-FGM, because they may insist on the terminology for their own reasons. I do not deny any other grown woman the ability or the right to define herself. If somebody wants to call herself mutilated, that's fine. Okay. But invite them here and let's have a discussion. Good. A very, enlightened discussion. But yes, I will send the link to National Assembly members, and we're going to have input, insights, presentations from all of these individuals that will give you another perspective. These are professionals that you can now use to evaluate the information that you're getting from FGM activists. So I really invite you to do that before your final deliberations.
Right, that is the message for National Assembly members, and it ends. What an insightful discourse on a topic that does not come any often on this program. But Dr. Sia Fuambai Ahmadu, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I must say your deliberations are quite insightful and interesting.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I would love to come again and chat about any other issue of importance to women and girls.
Yes, and thank you very much for being on the brunch. The brunch will be back next week, hopefully, inshallah. Until then, Lamin Cham wishing you have a great weekend.
Islamic microfinance is becoming an increasingly popular mechanism for poverty alleviation, especially for developing countries around the world. This microfinance service adheres to the principles of Islam as a form of social responsibility. Yona Islamic Microfinance is the Islamic microfinance of choice in the Gambia, trustworthy and reliable. At Yona Islamic Microfinance, we provide savings products, current accounts, financing products in conformity with Islam. In addition, Yona Islamic Microfinance also offers local and international remittances, takaful fund, management of zakat, management of awqaf, trading and investment, and building of strategic partnerships to bring financial services to the doorstep of the poor with donor projects, madrasas, youth organizations, women groups, and farmer organizations. Make a choice with Yona Islamic Microfinance today. For more information on Yona Islamic Microfinance, call 377-2151 or 9832-151, or visit Yona head office at Tipa Garage, Bakote, or visit any Yona branch located countrywide near you.
Planning to have an uninterrupted electricity and water supply from solar energy in the Gambia and beyond? Worry no more, because Solar Enterprise will provide you with the solutions at reasonable cost. We have experienced personnels who can install and advise you about your electricity and water supply with a warranty period. We have good quality solar products from North America and Europe. We provide services and sell products to individuals, organizations, institutions, private offices, communities, and government. These products are solar panels, batteries, charge controllers, inverters, water pump, water heaters, freezers, submersible pumps, and general solar accessories. Visit our stores at 48 Karaba Avenue and Brusubi Highway, or you can call us on 7657 479 980 8483 340 9400 or 635 9906.
Jamano Money Transfer Bureau de Change, your go-to option when it comes to money transfer. With Jamano, you can send money from anywhere in the world to your family and loved ones in the Gambia and be sure the funds will be delivered to them within the shortest time possible. For your convenience, funds sent through Jamano Money Transfer can be picked from all the banks and multiple other financial institutions, including Ajib Bank, Trust Bank, GT Bank, Mega Bank, Basic Bank, Reliance Financial Services, and Approved Services. Visit our head office at Bruceby opposite AfricMed next to Trust Bank Limited or email us at info@jamanomt.com. You can as well call us on 310-3050 or 310-3051 or yet still 733-0688. Our opening hours are 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Saturday and 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday. Jamano Money Transfer, your most trusted money transfer service where customer satisfaction is paramount. When you think of a simple, fast, and reliable money transfer, think Jamano Money Transfer.
Agada di.
Mbijan aganya.
Albaka.
Mbaka important.
Yo, nga transfer la sto.
Ya transfer la.
Ha, code nyinji.
Okay. Korsan. Nsila ID soto.
Sa soto. Sorry. Agada di.
Mbijan bro.
Albaka.
Mbaka.
Bara alla service o tariaka.
Mbale.
Mo ki janna nun kunu bara tariaka.
Jannom yona forest de bureau. Gambia tonkon na no mbali ya bere. Birin koyna fo kato.
Bari si kodo kino kato ni fo bolong blabe to.
56 branches mola soto Gambia jang.
Ha?
Gambia kono anin Gambia bantala bankol. Nka kodo kiya bere to. Kodo sifa fo falindiro fo nyaadi lafta memmen na kodi to poto nin kodi maraw. Jannam number 1 di nyonta. Andum fana nata anoda enterprise sotale. Wolam nyindi ko domorol fana kol fana be firale de dadi man domorol dir fana beteat. Gambia dawda yalo ma fa kendol sotale je.
Wo moyo diat.
Apelenta
ni wo ka ni lafta nyelen kendol e binaji.
Yalo bu kanyi la ko la baraka ba.
Yalo ndel chosano lo.
Abaraka.